headlines for today, the government of Tigray has condemned deliberate removal of evidence tampering, destruction, and the desecration of remains of victims of this genocide. Tufts University scholar says the international community has collectively and individually failed to stop the genocidal war in Tigray, and Eritrean refugees relocated from Tigray to the Amhara region are being killed and tortured by the Fano armed group. As we move on to the main stories, the government of Tigray has condemned the deliberate removal and evidence tampering and destruction of the remains of victims of genocide, and the government of Tigray has released a statement through its External Affairs Office regarding the Amhara expansionist forces' desecration of victims of the Tigrayan genocide, which by the Ethiopian media outlets has been broadcasted and led by the Amhara state authorities and their local and national allies as well. As documented by mandated institutions and media outlets, the invading forces committed unspeakable atrocities during the 8-month they occupied all of Tigray, and at the end of June 2021, these forces were chased out of most parts of Tigray, but the entire western Tigray and parts of the northwestern and eastern parts of Tigray currently remain under brutal occupation. The Amhara expansionist forces have done everything in their power to rid western Tigray of any signs of Tigrayans have ever been there to begin with. The statement stressed, consequently, the Tigrayans in western Tigray have borne the brunt of these genocidal triumvirates' plan to annihilate the people of Tigray. To that end, this rapacious Amhara expansionist forces, with the direct participation of the occupying Eritrean army and with the full participation of the genocidal Abiy Ahmed regime, has unleashed unimaginable horrors on the Tigrayans in the occupied parts of Tigray. The statement recalled that over a year ago, the U.S. State Department had publicly declared that ethnic cleansing was being committed in western Tigray, though such a declaration was neither followed by declaration on the determination of Tigrayan genocide, nor the robust remedial and punitive measures as well. It noted that the international community's deafening silence in the face of such barbarity has emboldened the Abiy Ahmed regime, the Eritrean dictatorship, and the expansionist Amhara ruling class to ramp up their repression of all Tigrayans. Emboldened by the inaction of the international community and adding insult to injury, the expansionist forces are now exhuming the bodies of Tigrayans whose forces were massacred and put in mass graves. And again, according to the statement, the sole purpose of destroying evidence, presenting themselves as the victims, and further unconstitutional claims included. By muddying the waters as to its genocidal record in Tigray, this clique seeks to evade accountability in the process as well. If the international community is serious about its pledge of never again holding perpetrators of massive human rights violations and abuses accountable, it cannot let these expansionist ruling class get away not only with the vicious atrocities against the Tigrayans that they've committed, but also with destroying the traces of evidence establishing its guilt. The government of Tigray said it's time for the international community to go beyond an expression of concern and take concrete actions to ensure a measure of accountability and justice for the countless of Tigrayans that have suffered thus far. Tufts University scholar says the international community has collectively and individually failed to stop this genocidal war that's taking place in Tigray. Mulgeta Gabrahiwet made the remark in a video presentation to an event organized by Firoz Lalji Institute for Africa under the title Finding a Pathway to Peace and Dialogue in Ethiopia. Mulgeta Gabrahiwet said the survival of the people of Tigray will only come out of their struggle and the resistance and will absolutely owe nothing to the international community.
2. Until all of them, including the UN Security Council and the EU Peace and Security Council, begin to reckon with their moral failures over Tigray, they will have little leverage over what the Tigrayan people decide to do. There is a chance for these international organizations to begin reckoning with themselves by forcing the government to immediately open access for humanitarian operations and the resumption of essential services. These are not issues for negotiation as they are simply crimes against humanity. The international community can also do enough to the removal of Eritrean forces from Tigray and the return of the borders of Tigray as they existed prior to the outbreak of the war.
Within his presentation, Mulgeta said Tigray will want to negotiate for a comprehensive ceasefire and a final political settlement. He added that Tigray's expertise has now shown that it should have a referendum under which its final status as an independent state or as a member of the Ethiopian Federation is currently to be determined. He also indicated that meanwhile Tigray will look into a transitional government arrangement whereby it is allowed to retain its security forces up until the political fate of Tigray is determined by a referendum. He stressed the need for the investigation and all forms of crimes by independent bodies during the transition so that justice is served to the victims and the perpetrators are tried in an internationally accepted standard. He said that this will allow Tigray to access international assistance directly, which they haven't been able to yet. A humanitarian consulting firm revealed that Ethiopia was the world's deadliest country for aid workers in the year of 2021, according to the Aid Worker Security Database, in which for the firm tracks these deaths. A total of 19 aid workers from the country have died in the year of 2021. 3 additional Ethiopian aid workers with Doctors Without Borders were attacked and killed by Ethiopian soldiers back in January of 2022. A researcher who recently published a book on the politics and inequities of global humanitarian work wrote on the conversation that local aid workers are increasing the strategic targets of attacks for military forces. He added, despite the dangers inherent in their jobs, they earn less money, have less job security, and have far fewer benefits, such as life insurance, compared with their international or expatriate colleagues. Almost 95% of the attacks on aid workers from 2010 to 2019 were all local or national staff. One reason why local relief workers face so much danger is that targeted aid workers has become a key part of the strategies in Ethiopia, Syria, and now also in Ukraine. According to the articles on the conversation, attacks on people who provide assistance does not simply endanger the aid workers, but it can terrorize and kill much larger numbers of people as well. Attacks on healthcare providers, for example, can rob thousands of patients of their life-saving medical care, and attacks on aid workers distributing food and water imperils thousands and thousands more. The article noted that the targeting workers violates international humanitarian law, a body of laws that govern the conduct of war, period. The article underlined that humanitarian aid and their workers need security rights and better pay as well. The Eritrean refugees relocated from Tigray to the Amhara region say they are now becoming victims of killings and torture by the Fano Amhara expansionist armed group. The Eritrean refugees have staged a demonstration and expressed the suffering that they're currently going through in the hands of the vigilante and armed groups. The refugees now in Dabat Gondar said they are being killed and beaten by the armed groups. Reports indicated that the Fano Amhara expansionist armed group recently shot and wounded 8 Eritrean refugees. Although the Eritrean refugees were getting protection under international accepted standard in Tigray, they were relocated to serve as tools of the new alliance between Asmara and the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, as well. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.